Ready for? Can I get
Yep. All right, and everyone, we are live. How you doing, Devon?
doing good? How are you?
I'm
Here's
pretty swell.
it's
Yeah.
pretty roomy here, I must say today.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Jason himself has a date. Somehow managed to pull that off in these COVID days, but good for him. John Marco's moving. Everybody's got things, but you and me, we here. It's all good.
We
By the
don't.
way, have you heard? There's a rumor going around. This rumor is oft repeated, but a rumor going around that Andrew Yang is going to be running for mayor. Or more accurately, that he's testing the waters, because it appears that somebody commissioned a poll that only surveyed people in Manhattan Island, and it includes things like who would you vote for mayor amongst these candidates, as well as do you or would you support a universal basic income and just other things along that nature.
Was it like describing him
Hmm?
without naming him? It was something like, "Oh, would you support a candidate?"
Yeah.
It was like specific too, right? It was like
Right.
presidential medal, like whatever, like award he got, right?
Yeah.
This name was a former
Champion of Change award winner. Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, that's one.
It was very, very specifically, obviously, Andrew Yang.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? I mean, it's and you talked about this forever ago, like literally back in Iowa, you talked about this, right? Of this is like it was your harebrained theory kind of back then, of like, hey, this doesn't work out or didn't work out, whatever. And then even now, it still applies where,
I mean,
if he doesn't get a Biden cabinet position, why wouldn't he try? And even then, it could be the same goal of like, it'll keep him being discussed. It'll be high profile because people already know him, and it's New York City, but it's not going to be like the same realm of like a competitive race. I mean, I don't know who else is trying to run, but
well, I mean, so I would say it's still going to be competitive. I wouldn't say Andrew Yang's an automatic win, but
yeah.
A poll from way, way, way back in I think it was like April, had him in first, for what it's worth. So like, he's definitely going to be a heavyweight front runner in the race if he does choose to run it. I've personally thought that basically I don't think Andrew Yang is likely to get a cabinet position in the Biden administration. It seems like more and more people are starting to think that. I've always thought that he was holding out for one, and because basically he wants the bird in hand rather than the two birds in the bush, right? Mm-hmm. He wants to affect national level change. So if he was offered a cabinet position, that's an opportunity to affect national level policies, and would therefore take it, right? But I always said, if he wanted to become president, because if he viewed that, if like he was serious and he thought that the only way to really get the amount of change necessary was by becoming president, then he's not going to do that by being Secretary of Housing and Urban Development.
Commerce. I think people are talking about commerce.
Right. Nobody knows who those people are. Yeah. All right. You will hear the mayor of New York way more times in the news than you're going to hear about that secretary. The only cabinet officials that people actually read about in the news are Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. Mm-hmm. Those are the only two cabinet officials that anybody knows about. The Trump administration is anomalous just because of the controversies. So, all right, you actually know that Betsy DeVos is Secretary of Education. Name for me a Secretary of Education in American history besides her. You don't know. And all you know about Betsy DeVos is that you're not supposed to like her, right? Like, nobody knows normally who the department or who that secretary is, or the Secretary of Energy, in this case, Ben Carson. Again, it's just because of the controversies, So if he wants to become president, like, being mayor of New York is absolutely the way to do that, not by being part of Biden's cabinet.
It's interesting.
And that's, what's up?
I said it's interesting because, most of those people in those roles, like from our perspective anyway, aren't people that were high profile prior and clearly have like big goals, big policy goals, and like things that they want to achieve and see done. Maybe they do want to do good, right? I mean, ideally, like whoever these random.
Everyone is a good person in their own story.
Yeah. But I feel like you pick your average secretary of what commerce, HUD, whatever. I feel like their capacity or what they've done in terms of like the change they've gone about creating isn't necessarily indicative of what someone like a Yang could achieve in that role. I feel like his ambition to do stuff in a national way would like make him actually dig into the role and see like, okay, how far can I take the capacity of this position? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so suddenly it almost, yeah, I mean, I'm being idealistic here, but
I mean, so let's say he's secretary of, I'll go with commerce. All right. That role, it's difficult to be a reformer because you can reform the organization of the Department of Commerce, but it's kind of difficult to actually reform commerce, right?
Yeah.
Because basically you can only do what you're equipped to do, what you have the tools to do. And when you're Secretary of Commerce, your tools are basically all administrative. Because at the end of the day, you're in charge of leading the organization. But the organization is supposed to be carrying out, effectively, the wishes of the president, right? And the wishes of the president are usually permitted by Congress, I should say. You have certain authorities that are executive functions and executive powers, and that he can execute via executive order. And then you have most of actually running the country, which is legislative. And that the president is the bully pulpit, hey, let's go in this direction. Please work with me, right? So it's difficult to reform and make sweeping changes, even if it was just narrowed to one like sector, as the secretary. It like, to be blunt about it, I'm basically saying that the secretary doesn't have enough power.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Secretary of Labor isn't gonna, make.
Secretary of Labor just can't suddenly create 5 million jobs. It's not something they can do.
Yeah, and a lot of times, I wasn't necessarily hearing this with commerce and else about that, but I know there was the discussion about Bernie and like being Secretary of Labor or vying for Secretary of Labor. Not that he's actually going to get it or anything, but
one, he wouldn't want it. Two, I don't think he was ever considered for it.
Oh yeah. But they were talking about like, the capacity to which he can do stuff, and then like, that's the kind of person that should be Secretary of Labor. But then people are saying like, if you have a Bernie and there's only one Bernie and they're the Secretary of Labor, like, and they rely on a bunch of other secretaries and a bunch of other like people and groups within Biden's cabinet that aren't Bernie's, and he's kind of just gonna be hanging out. If you get enough people actually aligned, which is the whole point of an administration, right? And the person who sets the administration is the president, which is why you'd want to be the president to get people who are really aligned rather than, but like ideologically opposed to each other. Which is funny because that's what Biden's talking about. Like, he's been floating this idea of like having Republicans in his administration and like some progressives.
That's just signaling. It's not going to mean anything.
Yeah. But even like the signal, like, what does that signal? It's like compromise and whatever, but it doesn't.
It signals that Biden is hoping that it would make him come across as a unifier.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think most of the people that would be swayed by that are probably already the people that think he is a unifier.
Exactly.
I don't really think it's going to convert any new people.
Mm-hmm.
Just to be frank. And let's also be real. It's fairly it's not. I don't want to call it an empty gesture because obviously, having someone that high in the circle is not meaningless, but like it's not very impactful. I guess I should say.
Yeah.
It's not a substantial gesture, really.
Yeah, but
maybe I'm just
I'm big into those. Not quite empty, but kind of more or less.
That's basically going to be the Biden presidency for the next 4 years, dude.
Yeah, and so I don't. Well, about with Yang in the campaign. Sorry, in the mayorship. Actually, before I say that, so what do you have today? Was that beef tacos you said?
Yep.
I got not quite tacos.
I've got this ass kicking buffalo pepper cheddar cheese from the farmer's market to go with it.
Itself. Okay.
It is phenomenal.
Buffalo cheddar. Buffalo
yeah.
pepper. It's like made from buffalo. It's like buffalo cheese. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not buffalo cheese. Sorry for the confusion. But like buffalo hot sauce.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. I have crab legs and assorted claws, whatever.
Welcome to Maryland.
You say that, but it's actually I don't actually know where these are from. Well, okay. They're from the ocean, I know that much. So I had probably
Do you know that they're from the ocean?
That is like I can at the very least attest that because well, probably within a week of being in this house specifically, like I was in a house for a bit, Victoria and I, and then we had to like move pretty quickly. But so we were just getting settled into here. We like just went over to like the town over Costco and filled up groceries, blah blah.
Sure.
And then these two dudes, I thought it was one dude at first, in a red van, just knock on our door. And this guy, I forget their names. They were like cartoon characters. One of them was like a short, bald guy. It was like kind of earlier, like in September, it was a little hot out, so he was kind of like wiping his head down and talking like a million miles an hour, like sales type guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then his buddy, like I don't know, Keith or Rusty, I think it was. Like even their names were like pretty cartoonish. So they're like a wholesale meat seafood van company.
Okay.
Yes. Sure. And so they were just talking about how, this other house, there was like a confusion with the sale, and so they have a bunch of leftover stuff that they're hoping to sell. And am I interested? And do I want to do credit or cash? Like that kind of like not give me an option kind of thing. And he's like, we got steaks here. Pulled out this box, started pulling out a bunch of different seafood. We got halibut. I don't think that's one of them. We got crab. We got shrimp. We got whatever. And we're like, we're good. Like we just went to Costco and everything. Like we packed up our fridge good. And then the Rusty, I think, was like, I'll tell you what. Like people say that they packed their fridge. I bet you didn't pack your fridge. Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll put this whole box of seafood in there in your freezer. And if I can't fit it, it's free. How about that? And I was like, okay. And then he went into our kitchen and just took all of the all the packaging out of the box, like individually packaged fish and whatever, crab is one of them. Spoiler alert: I bought the seafood from them. And he just started stuffing our freezer with assorted seafood, and it was like chatting with us. He's like, I'll tell you what, good thing you didn't go for the steaks or I wouldn't be able to fit all this in here. He was like putting the salmon here and it was like a fever dream, the whole thing. And at that point, first off, I was like a little, again, we just came here and it felt like a fever dream. And I think it was like way overpriced for sure. But I had a few thoughts. One was like, this is kind of wild and I'm kind of intrigued. Like I'm morbidly curious on if this is any good at all. And then also I think I just got paid for the first time, I think, and so it's like, well, I could do this, so maybe. And then I never buy seafood. Like I can never bring myself.
Smooth.
I could never bring myself to like go buy seafood at the store, and so these like random gentlemen just kind of start shoving them in my freezer. Like it's like a sign, basically.
Right.
And so I got it. I got it all. It was like raw shrimp and then breaded shrimp and salmon and perch and cod and crab legs. It was like 15 pounds, I think, total of different stuff. And that was a few months ago at this point. And this is our first time actually having any of it. It's pretty good, actually. Not gonna lie. Right after I bought it all, it was too much. It was too much. But
yeah. I mean, evidently the dude's like also a salesman, so
I guess so. And what's funny is that like I filled out this card, or they're definitely gonna come back.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to buy from it again, because like you said, sorry. And the reason I brought this all up was because we were new in the area. I'm in Virginia, but I'm right near Maryland, and there's in my town here of like 3,000 people. There's just people front yards just have little crab boxes or crab cages. They just go out like as a hobby or whatever, or just a side hustle, or maybe it's their whole, I don't know. And so I know there's good crab here. And so I asked the guy, assuming that he would have like local stuff maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him where the crab was from. And he said, again, in that classic like sales speed and pitch, like without a beat, he's like, oh, they're from the ocean. But anyway, and then he like changed the subject.
Okay.
Like, talking about the steaks or whatever it was. I didn't even know how to respond. I was like, okay, cool. Sounds good.
From the ocean. Got it, Chief.
Yeah, so they're definitely from the ocean. And they're good. I mean, I haven't had crab in forever.
Crab's delicious, dude. I love it.
It is good. I don't know what I expected it to be bad. Maybe the rest of the stuff isn't that good.
I don't eat kosher. But
to be fair, after I also don't know how you really like get bad crab. Like how bad could this have been? But after we bought it, I went and like looked this company up. I was like, do they any reviews? Like, do they even exist really?
Mm-hmm.
And just like Facebook reviews, and then they were all just like 1 stars, and it was only a handful of them, but it was stuff like the pork was the worst pork I've ever had. My mom got sick from the shrimp. This is the worst $1,300 I've ever spent in my life. And then I was like, he's like, oh, I bought what are those like chest fridges? Whatever.
Yeah, a chest freezer. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, oh, I got a chest freezer just for all this $1,100 worth of steaks and seafood, and it's all crap. And so that was like a mixed signal, because it's like, okay, obviously
you looked this up after you bought.
Yeah, because they were here. You shoved stuff in the freezer. I wasn't gonna like stop in the middle of it. And so obviously that was a little concerning. But then at the same time, the only people leaving reviews were like people who spent $1,000 on this random food. And so I would probably be annoyed too. The crab's okay. No one said anything bad about the crab, to be fair though. We still have everything else in the freezer back there.
So your verdict's still out on everything else?
Oh, yeah. We haven't even bothered. I think we've been like nervous too. And it's like, oh, what are we going to eat this week? And then, you just move all the seafood out of the way. It's like, oh, we got chicken or whatever. The same thing. Like we just keep eating the same stuff because we're like almost nervous about all the mystery fish we have in the fridge or freezer. But yeah, crab pretty good.
That was the most roundabout story to get to what you're eating. But all right, dude. Glad you got an experience out of it, man.
Yeah, that's almost why I wanted to buy it, because I like needed to. Me buying it ensured that it's gonna like stay in my memory for all.
Sure.
But yeah,
You've got some decent farmers markets out there, though. If you also want to, kind of shorten the delivery chain between the fishing boat and your plate.
Yeah, like the random ocean. Yeah, like there's a few different restaurants here in this town, and then like even small things like on the road to the bigger town. There's just like fresh steamed crab, just like a sign on the side of the road, right? There's like I don't know what it is. It's like part restaurant, part store, like a little grocery store, like local place here.
Mm-hmm.
I think Farm to Table is like its subtitle or whatever. It's like that kind of thing. And so still need to go to all that. I think now that we've had this crab, I'm definitely going to want to start digging into all that. But again, not bad. From the ocean, can't go wrong, I guess. If this crab is bad, then like what crab is bad, I don't know. It's worked out pretty well.
I have had bad crab before. It does exist.
Okay.
Yeah. It does exist.
Like, was there any telltale signs, or just was not good?
Yeah, I don't have I didn't buy it, so.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't know how to.
I've only ever had buffet crab before.
Say again?
I've only ever had like buffet crab.
Sure. Even buffet crab's been solid. Like, I would say crab is, pretty decent. Like, aside from one time, I can't think of any other times I've had bad crab either. So,
like, is this like, was it just not good, or was this like food poisoning type crab?
No, it wasn't like food poisoning crab.
Okay.
Yeah, it just didn't taste like good crab. I don't know how to.
Did it?
I mean, like, it didn't taste like bad. Like, oh man, I can't eat this.
Was it just like bland? Was it just like flavor?
Yeah. So I mean, like, it tasted bland. It didn't taste meaty. If that makes sense. Like, crab tastes like meat still, right? Like, it doesn't taste like red meat, but it still tastes like meat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Like
it didn't taste meaty, if that makes sense. And I'm not talking about the crab flavored fish that you can buy either. I'm not. Yeah. Trust me, I know the difference. But this was like years ago. Basically the only reason I remember it because I was thinking, wow, this is like the only time I've had bad crab.
Are you a butter person? Victoria?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, totally.
She like doesn't. She like
Victoria.
Yeah, she like specifically doesn't think it's good. She like avoids it.
I mean, it's probably the healthier route. Butter is literally fat. Like, that's what butter is. It is fat.
Like, I heated up butter for this, and at this point, it's kind of cooled by this point. So to the point where I don't really want to like dip my food in it because it's now reminding me that it's just butter. You know what I mean? So I'll still do it probably, but at least I can't pretend it's not fat anymore. You know what I'm saying?
I've got no qualms with eating butter. I like the way it tastes.
It's buttery. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Buttery type of, I don't know. Before I forget though.
Yeah.
I cut my own. What was I talking about? I cut my own self off to talk about the crab. But before that, I was talking about Yang in New York City.
Yeah, sure. Let's crawl back there. We'll crab walk back.
Yeah. No, because this is when you were kind of laying out this theory of yours back in Iowa about Yang. I think you declared that you would go work for his campaign, his New York City campaign. I remember this.
Yeah, I certainly said I was willing to. I reckon I still am.
You reckon? I guess that was my question then. I mean, you're close enough, right? It's not like dropping.
Not even. You are actually, you might not be closer. You are about the same distance as I am.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. It's still like, yeah, I guess it's functionally like if you have to basically live somewhere else for months or whatever it is, it doesn't matter where you're from, I guess. Whether it's a few hour drive or like a flight across the country, I guess.
Yeah, it's a 6-hour drive, so it's definitely a I would move there sort of thing. But of course, that would also be under normal circumstances where you can actually like canvas like a normal person, and these are not normal circumstances. I guess you still can knock on doors, but I have a feeling that New Yorker or New York City residents probably wouldn't really go for that these days. Just a hunch.
Yeah, and you might maybe in New York City specifically, you can't. Like, I feel like if any place you wouldn't be able to, it might be there. Yeah. The idea of like citywide races, but in New York City, crazy. They have ranked choice voting now.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to by 2021. I think.
I was just about to say that this election will be the first mayoral election with ranked choice voting.
Put Yang's theory to the test, huh?
Second.
I said it'll put his, and I guess all of our theory to the test. You know, like during the primary, we're like, oh, if only we had ranked choice voting.
Yeah,
he would definitely win.
Yeah. I do think Yane would win. So I never once in Iowa said that Yane is going to win, right?
Yeah.
Like I was very pragmatic about things. Internally, I was like expecting 5th, and I was telling everybody I was hoping for 4th. More or less was where I was pegging him, right?
You're projecting optimism. Relatively. I said you were projecting optimism, relatively.
Yeah, I was projecting optimism. You know, I mean, because it was true. I was hoping for 4th. You know. But yeah, 4th is definitely not first place. And the idea was 4th could be like a building stone, and then maybe he'd get like 3rd in New Hampshire or something. Like, that was the path to victory. But it was a very, very slim chance, and I knew it, and I never lied about it. I think that he'll win mayor of New York if he runs.
Yeah.
I do believe that he'll win.
I mean, there's no one that's going to run that is as known as he is. I mean,
well, at the national level.
Yes, that's true.
You know, at the New York level, I mean, you've actually got some like fairly well-known locals, like the New York comptroller is running already. We got a few others.
That's true.
But they're not quite as much national politicians. Fortunately for Yang, that means he'd be able to pull in on his national fundraising.
Oh, yeah.
And basically be able to compete with all the corporate donors and everybody else of the other guys. So I really like his odds because New Yorkers had a very favorable opinion of him. Mm-hmm. And basically this whole pandemic has only proven him right. On like everything.
He's in the past tense about what will happen. Like everything he said, he can be like, check that out. He doesn't have to like, formulate a vision in his like audience's minds, which is obviously harder to do than just be like, look around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And New York City of all places too.
Yeah, he just has to go like, if we're gonna force you to stay home, we should pay you to stay home. We can't take away your means of living if we're also not going to provide you the means of living. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
It's a very, very simple sales pitch. It's on brand, it's consistent, and it would work.
Yeah. I mean, and, he's not, like, known as a New Yorker. He's, like, known more as, like, a California, Silicon Valley or whatever thing. Person.
Which is weird. He's never lived there.
Yeah. In New York, I mean, he's lived in New York. Like, he's from,
He was a New Yorker, yeah.
Yeah, he's a New Yorker, so he can, like, I don't even know how it works. How do, like, I don't even know how mayor runs work. Like, do you have to, in campaigns work, do you have to be living there, or do you have to be living there a certain amount of time?
So I'm going to guess.
It's a bonus, obviously, if you're from there and you can talk about.
So obviously, each city is different, but I would wager that in New York City, you have to live in New York City. I feel fairly confident about that. I don't know that, but it's a solid guess of mine. And Andrew Yang is a New York City resident. He lives in New York City. So it's pretty easy to meet that checkbox.
Yeah, I guess like it is a good point about people running being New Yorkers, like that, like they're known locally as like people in New York. People in New York don't know him as a New Yorker even. So I mean, I don't know New York.
I was about to say, where are you getting that from anyway?
Getting what? That
you said that New Yorkers don't know him as a New Yorker. Where are you getting that from?
Well, they know him from his run. You know what I mean? Like they don't know him from his time in New York. Like if people
Well, yeah, I mean he wasn't a politician. So
yeah, so like, but I just mean like what you're saying about more local people running.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they've been politicians or not, like they've like formed a kind of mental link in people's minds to New York, and he just happens to live there. Like he's just a dude that they know that also lives there. He's not like I don't know. New York and people's identity of New York is like out of my realm, so I don't really.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I mean, I live in New York State, not New York City. My understanding is that he's considered to be a New Yorker. That's my impression. I think. Again, pretty confident in that assessment there.
Yeah, I'll air
that as a New York City resident, though, so I can't. But I'm fairly confident on that. I would be most curious to think, though, like, what would he actually do as mayor? So he could try to basically, make a UBI trial, but one of the big problems with UBI is if you localize it to a city, it turns more into a subsidy for living in that city and less of a UBI.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because subsidies basically raise the prices of things. So like the whole argument of, UBI would go to rent, that doesn't apply if it's a national level program or even a state level program, because you're competing with all these other places to live, right? And like it would not raise rent by $1,000. It's possible that it would increase the demand in certain areas more so that rents would raise. It's certainly not going to raise it up $1,000, but like I would predict like Honolulu. I would expect Honolulu rent prices to rise. I would actually expect New York City rent prices to decrease, which is actually pretty well supported by this whole pandemic, because rent prices have been dropping as more people have decided, I can work from home. Well, then why do I need to pay expensive rent if I can live somewhere else, right? Yeah. So I would expect New York City rent prices to decrease. But just my own personal suspicion, I would expect Honolulu to increase. So like it would be overall much more like equalizing, with some anomalous areas going up, right? But at the end of the day, it's all supply and demand, right? So if you say, right, if you live in New York City, we'll give you $1,000 a month, right? Then what you basically said is it costs, or you can pay up to an extra $1,000 a month more to live here because you're getting that $1,000 a month. Like basically the argument of landlords will take the money, like it actually kind of applies. Yeah. Again, it wouldn't apply to $1,000 because there's still going to be competition inside the New York market, but the entire New York market just got an extra $1,000 of purchasing power that is unique to the New York market that does not apply if you leave the New York market. So the New York market doesn't have to compete with other markets. It's just properties inside the New York market competing with each other, right? So that constrained competition is totally like how you would find higher prices. It would in effect just subsidize living in New York City rather than actually being like a universal basic income. Would rent prices go up $1,000 if there was a UBI New York City residents for $1,000 a month? No, it wouldn't go up $1,000, but it would go up. It would absolutely go up. I do believe that, because that's just how the dynamics work. So he could try to basically say, hey, here's a UBI experiment. And like I said, rent wouldn't go up $1,000. It would help people, right? But like, it's also going to have some of the negative things that don't apply at the national level that some people like use to decry it. And I don't know if he would want to kind of like prove those things right, because they'd be applied to the local experiment. Also, there's the fact of like, how would you pay for it? I don't know. I'm not an expert in New York City finances, right? But UBI has to actually be substantial enough to like mean something, Like if UBI is $50 a month, nobody cares. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not income, really.
If it's a UBI rather than, I think it was like last time I was on here, right? Like people talking about Michael Tubbs and like how we think, oh, he's getting the idea of universal basic income out there, and he's a champion for that stuff. But it's entirely possible that his experiment, right, can actually not only prove certain things wrong, but just the specifics of it. People can just equate it with welfare, and then you're back to the beginning of that whole argument loop. And so, you just have to be careful. And I don't really know how.
I think he could like trial it with public funds. So basically, he could be like, all right, Little Italy, all right, everybody in Little Italy, you're getting $800 a month for the next 6 months. Like that would be a massive program. Like if he did that, because it'd only be for 6 months, landlords aren't going to be like counting on it, right? So like the rents wouldn't necessarily go up, most likely, or if they did go up, it would be much more subdued because it wouldn't be recurring, and because like $800 a month for 6 months, like a lease isn't even usually that long, right?
Yeah.
But it would be, if it was every single resident, you'd be able to see a little bit more of the economic activity generation that spurred. Because one of the big fundamental flaws of current UBI trials is that they're not like community wide. It's basically like, all right, here's 100 people chosen at random, right? Well, okay, cool. So you helped the lives of those 100 individuals. Congratulations. No shit, you gave them money. Right? Like, of course, right. Like, of course, getting free money is going to help improve your life. No shit, Sherlock. One of the biggest features of UBI is that it builds the community, because it means every single individual has an extra, X dollars of purchasing power. One of Andrew Gaines' examples that he likes to give is, I'm in a small town of, 10,000 people, and right now starting a bakery is a dumb idea. But if everybody's getting an extra $1,000 a month, suddenly starting a bakery is a good idea, right? Like that happens, and that's one of the biggest like benefits of UBI, and it's even part of like how Andrew Yang intends to pay for it at the national scale. Just the fact that it would grow the economy and generate existing tax receipts on existing taxes, right? Like I think that counts for like a whole, I don't know, a quarter or something. I don't remember the exact number, but like a significant chunk of how to actually pay for it.
The bar chart. Yeah.
Right. Is just like, hey, we're expecting the economy to grow. Which it would. It would grow. Like no economist in the world thinks that increasing the velocity of money and giving, more purchase power to more residents would not stimulate the economy. That's why you hear about stimulus in the news and whatnot. Like everybody knows, you give a poor person money, they're going to spend it, right? Yeah. And they're going to spend it faster than the rich person. And it's basically like a sliding scale for everybody in between, right? So if you're in the middle, you're going to spend it just a little bit slower than the poor person and a little faster than the rich person, right? And like, this is how really, if you care about progressive politics or whatever, then this is how UBI is one of the most progressive policies, because it, is effectively a sliding scale, just automatic method of helping poorer people,
they're intrinsic to the policy.
Right.
It's not like we have to. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no management required. It's built in. $1,000 means a lot more money to someone earning $12K a year than it does to someone earning $100K a year, right? Like this is not rocket science. So, yeah.
And I think recently he's been doing. I still like get his emails and everything. Humanity Forward emails and all that. He's been talking about like the cash caucus recently, right? Have you heard of this?
No. What's the cash caucus?
I mean, that's like the term he used. Like,
Sounds stupid. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I think it's like, I don't know if it's a real thing. I think it's a phrase he was using in these emails.
Okay.
I think right after the election, he announced like, oh, the primary goal of Humanity Forward right now is going to be to be getting as many members of the new Congress as possible. Not new members, but just of the new Congress to support stimulus checks and the people and all that stuff. And so I think the cash caucus is just the term for the caucus of people who support stimulus checks, I guess.
Yeah, which is growing. That's for sure. It's growing.
It is, yeah. Although there's the whole Nancy Pelosi getting reinstated. Is that official yet, or is that like going to be happening?
It matters in the new term, but like it's whatever.
Yeah, like de facto, like she's like no one even ran against her. I don't know.
You know what? Now that Trump is out of office, maybe, just maybe, the Democrats can think that they can virtue signal a little less and, focus on getting shit done maybe a little more. Just maybe. I know this is like wishful thinking, but I have hope here.
Yeah. It's funny because I was a cousin of mine in Arizona, like when I was still in Arizona for the election, him and I were talking about voting and just what he's like left-leaning, like quite left-leaning. And I don't know what he ended up doing, but he was talking about not voting for Biden and then going and supporting the provisional ballot, not the props there and stuff like that, but not actually voting for Biden himself. He was talking about, he's like really pessimistic about the DNC and just the Democrats in general and the direction they've been going. And he was saying that the ideal scenario to him would be the Democrats not getting all three. So whether it's like whether they get the Senate, Trump stays in office, or Biden getting in and them not taking the Senate, which is probably going to happen at this point. I mean, I don't know. Is that what it seems like? That's still seems like it's the case, right?
Yeah, Andrew Yang is working his damnedest to flip Georgia blue, but I put money on Georgia staying red.
Yeah.
And you know why I bet that, by the way? Because the Republican, so even though the state of Georgia voted for Biden, all right, the Republican candidates received more votes than the Democrat candidates in the Senate. Yeah. All right. What that means was that enough Republicans said, fuck you in particular, Trump, but I'm still a Republican, which I actually think is a really cool message, just for what it's worth. I think that is a phenomenal message because Trump has hijacked the Republican Party. So yeah, I think that is a phenomenal message. Super happy to see that.
Yeah, this idea that I think across states too, in most states where there was an imbalance, I think it was that the down ballot Republicans outperformed Trump. Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Is that right? I remember that being kind of the consensus, especially as things were still rolling in. But
it was a lot of people saying, I'm really not sold on Democrats, but I'm sold on not Trump. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a good thing because I think that party politics is one of the leading detriments of our country. If you're going to vote just for a Republican or just for a Democrat, I think that you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
So even if you're going to vote for an individual that I disagree with, I'm thinking structurally speaking, on the bright side, we've got enough people that they actually just changed the outcome of an election because they didn't vote by party lines. That is phenomenal. I am very, very happy to have that. Mm-hmm. Because we need more of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Georgia, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's just like the only thing to rally against right now, right? And that's just the next focus. But
well, yeah, I mean, if the Democrats actually win those 2 seats, like that is massive. It's difficult to understate the impact of that.
Yeah, it depends too. It's like if we know turnout. I think both things are going against the Democrats. One is that the Republican Senate candidates got more votes, despite a big turnout, and then Joe Biden winning. But the turnout's not going to be as high on this runoff.
Right, which is historically going to favor Republicans as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm saying, like, even without that, that's my biggest data point for why the Democrats are not likely to win.
Mm-hmm. And so I think it makes sense, obviously, to operate under this idea that they're not going to keep the Senate. And so I think that if gridlock, whatever, if that's going to be like the story, right? If that's going to be the focus, right? Biden being like, hey, listen, McConnell is just holding up everything I want to do. And
yeah,
whether if Yang is in a secretary position, or he's just trumpeting from humanity forward, right? Like on the outside. I don't know what good in this short term he's gonna do nationally while all that's playing out. I think if Yang's in the Biden administration and there's Democrats have the Senate as well, then he can be in there and probably motivate and get the ear of people who would further push and snowball towards big stimulus and XYZ that the Senate would do. But if I don't know. I think he would be better off just doing the New York race, because it's the same thing with the presidential race.
Well, he can announce for New York in January still. The deadline is like January 14th, somewhere around there. I'm not certain on that. So he can announce that after the Georgia race. So he can legitimately fully focus on the Georgia race and then focus on the New York race afterwards. They don't have to compete.
Yeah, sure. Even beyond the Senate race, because again, like he is right in that bigger stimulus, if that's what he wants, getting the Democrats across the finish line in Georgia is the way to do it. Yeah. That's the focus, the short-term focus. But again, like if that doesn't turn out, right, I'm saying that if it's a Republican Senate and he gets offered a cabinet position,
yeah,
I think propelling stimulus, propelling UBI would probably be, you're talking about how it would shoot towards running for president by being the mayor of New York, right? Although de Blasio's there hanging out, doing his thing, running in 2020. But if
de Blasio's not running,
was running. I meant like
there's term limits. He was never allowed to run for the next election.
So yeah, not for next mayor, but he was mayor of New York and then ran for president, and then he.
Oh, that yeah,
did his thing, yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure he's obviously thought about it, and there's no way that poll isn't tied to him in some capacity. Like, there's no way he didn't know. That was not news to him, right? Like when he saw that Politico article, right? Oh, yeah. People are polling about me for New York City. What other moves would he do? Like what? If it's not a cabinet position, if it's not that, like does just
you're saying if he doesn't get cabinet and if he chooses not to run?
Yeah, I don't know what he would choose to do. Just advocating for humanity forward.
So when I say that, I don't think he was ever going to get a cabinet position. I do think that he would is or was going to be offered a position in the Biden administration. It just wasn't going to be seated at the cabinet.
Yeah.
So, and Andrew Yang would have to decide whether he would want to accept that or not, But I think it overwhelmingly likely that he is either working as part of the Obama administration or running for mayor. I think it very unlikely that he does the math and decides that a different path is his best outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that he does. He's obviously going to have spent more time thinking about it than I have, right?
Yeah, presumably.
But that's not the way that I see it. I don't think that third avenue is very likely.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that Zach Grauman just had a conference call with Yang Gain just 4 days ago, I think it was. And he basically said that the goal of Humanity Forward was to become a major influencer in politics, just like the NRA currently is, or like Planned Parenthood currently is, and be something that's going to stick around for a long time.
Yeah.
Sure. So that's a very interesting statement.
Yeah.
And, it'd be interesting to, I guess, see how that could happen.
It's curious how Humanity Forward would operate and like what its goals would be if he is in the Biden administration, right? Like, I mean, would he still, if he was on a cabinet position or in a cabinet position, could he do Yang Speak still? How does that work?
I don't see why not, but I don't know.
I guess so, right?
I can't see why not, though.
Yeah, Betsy DeVos doesn't have a podcast. Yeah,
I don't think she'd have many people listening to that podcast.
People just like hate listening, like you're saying before. Just I don't even really know why. I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to know why she sucks. I don't know. I mean, whatever. She's gone anyway.
She was nominated by Trump. That's all the reason that you need to know that you don't like her. Am I right?
Yeah.
Which is very unfortunate because you know who else was nominated by Trump? Secretary Mattis. All right. And Secretary Mattis was a phenomenal Secretary of Defense. Absolute top tier. So
wasn't Trump just shitting on him the other day?
Yes, they but he was still nominated by Trump, all right? So I was just pointing out that the logic of being nominated by Trump doesn't automatically make you bad. Logic, but it's good enough logic for the average voter.
The route is you were nominated by him, but have you since gone against him in some way to where now Trump doesn't like you, and then have you written a book about how Trump isn't very good? If you have, then you're good to go. What's his face? The guy with the mustache?
Bolton.
Bolton's, yeah.
Yeah.
That was his exact trajectory, right? When was Mattis gone? How long? He's been gone for a while now, right? I didn't even realize.
Yeah, it's been a year.
Oh, yeah, wow.
It's been a little over a year, I think. Mattis resigned when Trump said, hey, those Kurds that have been doing all the good fighting against ISIS for us, fuck them, we're out. It looks like Turkey wants to invade, and the response that Trump gave was, fuck them, we're out.
Yeah.
And Mattis could not stand by that. He said, these are our allies. We need to stand with our allies. We cannot abandon them to die, And then sure enough, as soon as we pulled out, Turkey invaded.
Mm-hmm.
Turkey still holds that land, by the way. Turkey took a solid, I think it was 2/3 of Syrian Kurdistan. They just took it, and they still have it. There's no one to say stop. Syria is not exactly that functional of a state at the moment. So the UN looks the other way. We've obviously pulled out. And the Peshmerga, the Kurdish guys, they're not strong enough to take on the Turkish army. I mean, like the Peshmergas can kick the ISIS ass all day long, every day. All right, because both of them are basically almost non-governmental. I mean, like you can argue that ISIS was a government, just like you can argue that the Peshmerga belonged to the government. But neither of them are like UN nations government. All right, like there's different levels of officialdom and I want to say like permanence, I should say, for your level of government, right? So I'm going to put both of those as not permanently established governments, right?
Yeah, C tier.
Sorry?
I said C tier. They're C tier governments.
Sure,
States.
So I think it's kind of disrespectful to put ISIS and the Kurdistan guys at the same tier. By the way, I'll throw that out there.
Fair enough.
Anyway, they're not like functioning, internationally recognized permanent governments. Turkey is. In fact, Turkey's a NATO member, even. Turkey has a strong military. Turkey is, in addition to the United States, if I remember correctly, Turkey is the only other nation that's actually kept to their obligation to spend the certain requirement that they have to as part of NATO. Right. So Turkey has like a big military. That's no guarantees of how effective that military is, but it is a professional and large military. Right. And yeah, the Kurdish guys, like they're not going to be able to beat that. Like let's just be real. That's not going to happen, So they had to pull back, which they did. And like I said, Turkey increased the size of their country by like the size of Connecticut. They decided that's how much land we want. We want a whole state of Connecticut. And they took it.
Yeah.
Just straight up took it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mattis said, that's not cool. I'm out. That was the straw that broke Mattis's back, as it were.
What's so, and it's similar to like every other, kind of foreign conflict thing we've talked about on the show, which is just that, that was happening. Everyone was thinking about that. It was a big deal when he pulled out. People were talking about, what about the Kurds? Like, they're our allies. Oh my God. And then everyone just kind of forgets that the ramifications of that are still manifesting.
Yeah.
In that region. Like, it's not like, oh, that happened and it's not happening anymore. Like, that's done, right? We think, oh, what was the outcome of that? Well, Mattis retired. Mattis resigned. Like that's our concept of like the repercussions of, I guess from our perspective of that conflict and decision by Trump, especially when we think about it from the lens of like, what did Trump do? What has Trump been up to? And not like a lasting like policy change and like effect. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I forgot when he even, resigned. So it's not like I've been thinking about that, conflict very much, obviously. But yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of, conflicts in the Middle East, Azerbaijan and Armenia. I don't know if you remember talking about. I think you were on that episode. Maybe you weren't. So I don't know if you knew, but like they basically were at war, like since September.
I think the most recent time we've talked about it was oh great, now I'm forgetting.
Probably in September. Yeah. Well, anyway, they just had a peace brokered by Russia, so that conflict is at least in a ceasefire. I'm gonna say it at the surface. Azerbaijan won. Basically, they were trying to regain a territory that they had lost in a previous war, and more or less they have it now. So,
was it Ethiopia, the other conflict?
Yeah, the Ethiopian civil war. I haven't actually followed up on that over the last week, but that was like escalating. Last I did check up on it. I guess I can look up headlines right now.
Yeah, I think it doesn't seem like it's done. That's for sure.
Well, let's see. Well, this is a headline from U.S. News. Ethiopia's prime minister savors victory. Well, meanwhile, the Tigrayan leader says war is not finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one from the Washington Post saying like why the conflict could spill beyond its borders.
Yeah. Ahmed's forces have won the battle, but not the war. So.
Yeah, it seems like it's just kind of percolating. And it's going to like.
Yeah.
I mean, like we were talking about it. We were talking about like a pretty decent like escalation.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's. I mean, maybe it could still obviously, but it doesn't seem like it's quite accelerating that way. Yeah, it's especially right now, like Trump's talking about. Everyone's thinking about like the amount of troops in Afghanistan right now because Trump's been talking about pulling some out, but not all out, and so you have people who want them all out or like saying. Like Trump, why is Trump being a pussy and like not pulling them all out? And then everyone's like, people who don't like Trump are criticizing him just for pulling troops out. It's like, see, look, this official says we shouldn't pull troops out. See, Trump, you don't know what you're doing. And that's like the extent to now, like, which we're talking about Afghanistan again. Not like, oh, what's been happening in Afghanistan this whole time. While we've been not thinking about Afghanistan. Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally right. People don't even think about Afghanistan anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or Iraq. Or Syria. Or, I mean, the Middle East. Like, people don't even think about the Middle East. As far as I can tell, people have been Trump, COVID, or, like, just employment, jobs, income, livelihoods,
Which is like decently, that's pretty fair. Anyway, like, especially.
I haven't heard the average person care about foreign relations in like a year. You know, not since COVID started.
Yeah, I mean, even before COVID, like I don't know how many people were thinking about Afghanistan, but especially now, it's like.
Yeah, I mean, even a year ago, people weren't thinking about Afghanistan, but the Iranian like rebellion, you probably don't even remember. But back in November and December, like people were wondering if we were going to go to war with Iran.
That was January. That was January.
Yeah.
That was 2020. That was this.
Okay, basically a year ago.
Yeah.
I remember it being winter. All right, that was the timeline I put in my head. I remember it being winter, campaign season. That's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So you do remember it, right? Like that was a big story. Americans talked about that.
Yeah, it was.
And it's been since that I've heard about people care about foreign policy. I haven't heard the average American care since then.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you can argue that the average American doesn't have to care. So.
I mean, especially when like they are being presented with immediate things to care about. Now.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to care about, problems going on in Eritrea when you're trying to make your rent, and keep the roof over your head and keep the electricity bill paid on time. Well, one of those problems is definitely a little more personal, and I am fully in agreement. You gotta take care of your needs before you can worry about someone else's problems. The United States does have a global leadership role, I should say, that the world put on us, and the extent that we don't fill it, that means that someone else will.
Yeah.
That's how the world works. What we choose not to fill, someone else will. For better and for worse.
Yeah,
there's a few cases where like it's probably been a better thing. You know,
Mhm.
I can give you a lot more cases where it hasn't been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we were just talking about how we pulled out of that region with Turkey and the Kurds, and then we also talked about two nations that were in conflict, and a peace deal was brokered by Russia. Right, like these are two different things happening at the same time in these countries, and obviously in Russia, obviously is the thing that the one foreign thing that we've thought about the most, obviously over these last few years. But even then, we still don't know. We don't know what they're doing. We just hear like they're hacking, I guess, kind of, or they're planting, Trump into office or whatever. We're not talking about. And again, even I kind of forget. Like, what is, like the Ukraine? What was that region called? Oh no, how did I forget?
Donbass.
No, probably.
Yeah, that's the name of the region.
I mean, there was a.
Why was thinking of Donetsk? That's the name of one of the cities. Or Crimea. Are you talking about Crimea?
Crimea, yeah.
I interrupted you mid-sentence, so I guess you could have been going a different direction.
Yeah, I was saying Crimea. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't hear you. Sorry. I guess Victoria was yelling Crimea from the other room, guessing what I was talking about. But yeah, like, even when we're thinking about a group or like it's not like Russia. Yeah, like we're thinking about. It's related to Trump again. Like it's not related to like their actual actions and how it actually affects things. But
yeah. Well, anyway, dude. Thanks for being here on the show, Devon.
Yeah.
Everyone else
enjoying my crab.
Yeah, it's been good, dude. All right, if you get more food from them, let me know. You know how that story goes.
The rest of the 14, 13 pounds of the food I already still have from them is still in the freezer. And so, yeah, maybe next episode I'll try the perch outs or whatever. I've never even had perch before. So I don't even know like how to compare it.
What? Perch? I've never even heard of this.
It's a fish. I don't know, it's like an orange like fish. I don't know. Okay, I bought this.
I'm gonna Google it now.
From these people I've never.
How do I spell this?
It's just Perch. Just how you think perch.
Perch.
Yeah, Perch.
Common name for the fish, perca.
Yeah, okay. I have that in my I have like probably 2 or 3 pounds of that in my freezer.
All right. Well, I guess let me know how it goes.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. Well, actually, I'll save that. I was gonna ask you about the game that we did. Your game.
Oh, yeah. Actually, let me tell you about that offline.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. All
right. Good stuff. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. Stay healthy. Be safe. Be kind. Bye-bye.
See you guys.